everybody, and welcome back to the People's Brief. I'm your host, Lynae Vanee. I know good and goddamn well that wasn't the AC that just went out.
Hold on, let me get maintenance.
Not in this heat. Not when it's 93 degrees and feels like 107. What does that even mean? Somebody said, is this the heat my ancestors were out there picking cotton in? Hell no. What this heat is, however, is not no ho. In fact, in relation to the heat our ancestors did suffer and toil in, just even in the past 100 years, temperatures have gotten incrementally higher since the start of the 20th century. Now, yes, temperatures fluctuate naturally, but make no mistake, we have seen a consistent 55-year rise in extremely hot summer days. And I know y'all can tell. It used to be that on a hot sunny day, you could fry an egg on the street. Now the streets themselves are melting. Ciao. We're seeing increased frequency in heat waves peaking at higher temperatures with more and more record-breaking hot days. And I'm sure you know where this is going, but walk with me. I'm trying to set up an episode here. And why is that, you ask? Human intervention, of course. Literal global warming, what we've been hearing about for decades, driven mainly by the burning of fossil fuels. That's right, my friends. Today's episode is about climate change. We learn about it in school, hear about it in political debates, read an article or post about it from time to time, but how many of us associate the lofty concept of climate change with the random, crazy, and honestly scary weather events that we're seeing more of right now? Outside of extreme heat, which is responsible for most weather-related deaths, higher global temperatures means more droughts, floods, wildfires, severe storms, intense hurricanes, and even winter storms. We can't go 6 months without a weather event devastating an entire region of the country. And though climate scientists have been screaming about climate change since the 1950s, hell, really the 1800s, humans have continued to add to the carbon footprint at such a rate that experts say we have less than 4 years to turn this ship around. And with the direction we're going in, that probably ain't happening, hate to tell you. Right now today, the US is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases globally and has historically been the largest contributor to cumulative emissions. I hate it here. And the Trump regime seems eager to put us back in that top spot, despite the fact that climate change has claimed hundreds of thousands of American lives already. But today, we are not here to lament or to scare you into action. To be frank, making any kind of impact on climate change is largely out of the little people like you and I's hands. What we are here to do is bring all the information we can to y'all's front doorstep so we can continue to make informed decisions about who we vote for, where we put our money, and how to hold those who can enact change accountable. Why? Because y'all not finna set me and my grandkids up for failure. Well, you very well might, but me and mine's not going out without a fight, is all I'm saying. So lock in, get ready to learn about all the ways climate change is affecting our communities right here, right now, on the People's Brief. All right, let's start with the basics. What exactly is climate change? According to NASA, climate change is a long-term change in the average weather patterns that have come to define Earth's local, regional, and global climates. Sunlight hits the Earth, some of it bounces back. But thanks to pollution, which Captain Planet and them damn Planeteers warned us about on Saturday mornings, and for good reason, gases are trapping heat like Tupperware. Man, Captain Planet, wonder how he's doing. The gases are emanating from burning coal, oil, and gas. So now, our planet, she's steaming and she's fighting back. Oceans have risen, and as we said before, storms are intensifying and ice caps are indeed melting, depleting the well-being of our ecosystem as we know it. A vast array of species have lost centuries of habitats and have gone extinct because of it. And no matter how many times conservatives tell us we have bigger fish to fry because climate change isn't real, we can clearly see that those lies are having an almost irreversible impact on every living thing on this planet. But why haven't we done anything? Because it's not just an environmental issue, it's a political one. And the same folks that caused the crisis are profiting from the collapse. So tonight we're breaking down how climate change works, why it's spinning out of control, and if we can, in fact, save the planet. Climate change can just seem like a really scary topic, and climate activists say that we have only 4 years to reverse it. But I feel like we were having a conversation earlier and you said it's not reversible at this point. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, at this point, I'll say it like this, Lynae. I feel like the horse has already left the barn.
Okay.
The changes that we'll make on a global level, if there are changes made on a federal or even state level or even a city level, are at this point going to be helping generations to come. So it's like you setting up a trust fund. You're not setting up a trust fund for yourself. It's not your savings account or your bank account. That's for the generations to come. And so what we're doing for climate on a macro level it's going to help years and years and years from now. And I'm talking about decades, possibly hundreds of years from now, if we do the right things.
Yeah.
And that depends on who
And that's not to say
is
that
saying
we
it's
shouldn't
right.
do
yeah.
it.
And no, yeah, it does
'Cause it
not
still affects us
absolve
every
us of
day.
the
It's still
responsibility.
dangerous every
but
day.
the threat is here and it's now.
Yeah.
So at this point, we have to be responsive to what the weather is doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's where meteorologists come into the conversation. It's like, there are a lot of things that are going to happen from administration to administration. People are going to feel different types of ways, but how can you survive what is hurting many people at this moment?
Yeah. And so just for clarity, just once again to put it out there, what they're saying about 4 years, we can do things within these 4 years to, I guess, keep the world from an eternal trajectory towards madness and chaos.
It's kind of like the earlier you pull back, the less of the brunt it will be longer down the road.
Okay.
Who knows what is going to happen, but also who knows what types of technologies will evolve that could possibly alleviate that. So we have, even you think about the advent of EV vehicles. So we're lowering emissions because people are charging their vehicles with batteries. And so at the same time, there are things that are being done. It's just because we are caught in between the here and the now and the next.
I have my thoughts about
slow
EV
progress.
vehicles. I don't know if we have time to get into it today, but anywho.
That's a second conversation.
A second conversation. And you know what? I feel like I will say something because what really blows my mind about electric vehicles, I think it's great. We're trying to solve a problem, but the problem came because of slavery. All of this mass production, all of these greenhouse emissions, trying to mass produce things from the culture of the slave trade and just trying to do that in every industry. It's because of capitalism. And so we use capitalism once again with the people who are mining the cobalt in the Congo for the electric vehicles, perpetuating the same issue. And it's just like we don't learn.
No.
Moving along. So, as long as I can remember, the thing that I've heard most discussed when we talk about climate change is protecting the ozone layer and what we're doing to the ozone layer. But that feels like so far away from us and such a heady concept. I wonder if there's a way we can physically demonstrate that for the people?
Yeah, let's bring it down to earth.
Okay, great. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, so what do we got here?
Okay, so we're going to make an atmosphere and a surface out of your hand right here. Okay,
great.
So you are the precious earth right here. But we're trying to protect it from the sun's harmful rays. And we do that by basically creating a form of an ozone layer, because the ozone about 6 miles above our heads is the thing that basically keeps the sun from not scorching us when we walk outside on a day-to-day
Only
basis.
6 miles?
Yeah, 6 to 12 miles.
Oh.
Yeah, I
thought it was up there.
It ain't that far.
Okay.
If you was driving, you would get there in a few minutes. Okay. But okay, so we're gonna, our ozone layer is some sunscreen. Okay. I got it. It's gonna match your skin tone. It's not gonna be that regular white stuff. Okay. So I just want you to kind of rub that in like that. Okay. You see it?
Okay.
So it's blending in, and this is the way the atmosphere works. You look up in the sky and you see blue skies. You don't see all the things that are in the sky, like the ozone layer, that help protect us. Okay, so you're rubbing that in. I even help you out a little bit.
Okay, great.
Like with the makeup counter into it. Okay.
Okay.
So you have a nice layer of protection on there. That is the ozone.
All right.
Here are all the things that are working against the ozone. We call these CO2s, or greenhouse gases.
Okay.
It's causing this to thin out. And so let's just put a little bit of, how about some petroleum jelly, okay? So you're not ashy, but we're going to act like you got a little ashes.
Okay.
On there,
Okay.
You got it, okay? So rub that in, okay? Maybe you're outside, doing your thing in your garden, in the weeds or whatever. You want to put on a little bit of bug spray. Okay, so we got that on there. All right, so you're starting to add things up. And this is exactly what we're doing to the atmosphere. We are releasing chemicals, car emissions, factories, everything. All of these particles are flowing into the air.
Aerosols.
We call these aerosols. Yes, exactly. That's why we brought this out. Okay, some other aerosols, these actually smell a little bit better than that. And these are mine. But
Okay.
okay, so a little smell good there. Okay, so we're all done. We'll even say that we put 3 different chemicals on top of the ozone layer.
Yeah.
So how effective do you think the ozone is now?
Yeah.
Not very effective at all.
And there's holes in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to do exactly what it needs to do. And every time We drive cars with gasoline. Every time a factory sends plumes of smoke into the air and all the gazillion other things that we do, it is causing that ozone to thin out. That's why it's so close.
Okay.
Because it's getting thinner and thinner as time goes on. We see blue skies. We don't see the ozone layer that is protecting us. But if we don't really change some things over the next few years, it's going to be too thin to really do what it needs to do.
Okay, all right. Let's see what this is here. You got 2 pieces of paper and a flashlight.
Okay, so when that ozone layer thins out, meaning, okay, it's not doing what it could do if we were not releasing all these chemicals in the air, this is what happens to us here on the ground. So the ground is now no longer going to be your hand, it's going to be this piece of paper.
Okay.
So like, lift up the black sheet right here, okay? Some
Should we read
old
what
school,
it says?
Yep,
Okay.
read it out loud.
Inside urban heat islands.
Where do you think that's at?
The hood.
The hood.
Okay. All right.
Everywhere that has asphalt, pavement, roads, streets, a lot of buildings, things like that, we call those urban heat islands. That's pretty much for every city in America. Atlanta, an urban heat island. Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, LA, urban heat islands. Okay, so we're gonna turn the flashlight on, and now, okay, this is a regular flashlight with a regular light here, okay? But when we put it behind the paper, what do we see on the other side?
It's red.
Okay, so it's not like a regular light color like we
Yeah.
would have if we just did it like that.
Okay.
It changes colors. It's diffused, okay? So now let's hold this one up here.
Okay.
And this is what we call the country or the rural areas or
Okay.
areas that have more vegetation.
Okay,
that have more
outside urban
plants
heat
outside.
islands.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
outside. So this is the country area, rural areas, and they're just simply more plants, okay? Well, we're looking at the light, and it is dim,
clear.
but it's clear.
Yeah.
It's the same light. It doesn't change colors. So
Okay.
what does this tell us? Well, it says that asphalt urban heat islands, that they struggle, surfaces like that, they struggle to retain heat.
Okay.
And so that heat does not actually go through the Earth's surface as it would if it were outside on the grass or perhaps in the trees. It cannot absorb it. It can't absorb it through photosynthesis like green can. Black can't do that. So therefore, the urban heat islands end up being much hotter. And it's the heat that not only causes us to scorch, especially in the summer, but it also leads to much heavier rainfall that can lead to flooding.
So this is one of the benefits, I think, just outside of, no, you're gonna have to tell me because I don't do science. But when they say to plant more trees.
That's exactly
Okay.
why they say to plant more trees,
Okay.
because it once again, it is not only shade. It's nice to have trees out there, especially when it's hot, but it is the absorption that the trees do to basically redirect the sun's rays. If it's just hitting the ground or the pavement that heat is bouncing back up.
Okay.
And so that's why you can touch something that's 5 feet off the ground, AKA your car, and be like, that's hot.
Oh.
Because that heat is hitting the ground and it's coming right back.
not being absorbed.
The asphalt can't handle it.
Okay.
It just don't got it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So now that you're in the know, what can you do to protect your life, your family, and even your property from the dangers that are brought on by climate change? Well, first, you should visit climatecentral.org. There you can find out if you're in a heat or in a flood zone. From there, you need to check your hood, check your neighborhood down to your home. Do storm preps, clean the drains, clean the gutters. Maybe perhaps you need to plant trees, while some trees you may need to move just because they're simply too close to your home structure. After that, you need to check your insurance. If your home is not insured, you need to get up to speed on that. But perhaps, considering your vulnerability that you found on the map based on your risk level, you may also need to add additional insurances like flood insurance. Also, you need an emergency plan. You need a plan. When storms come, you need to know exactly what you need to do to make sure you can get through that situation without having to be hit the hardest. Essentially, you need to have physical products, the resources to be able to get through, but you also need to have the financial resources to be able to make it, especially if you have to leave town. Finally, you need to have the courage to ask. Open up your mouth and ask for what you need. That could be a landlord, an HOA president, a city council person, or a county commissioner. Whoever is your governing official or whoever has authority over the property that you happen to stay on or the property that you happen to own. There's an obligation by them to keep you, your family, and your property safe. That could be as simple as adding a storm drain or perhaps even opening a nearby cooling center on the hottest days. But you have to know your risk. You have to know where you're most vulnerable. And by that, you'll know exactly what you need to ask for. There are plenty of resources online, such as places like climatecentral.org, where you can get ideas to help, once again, to alleviate the brunt of climate change. You can not only save your life, but you can save the life of your family members and your neighbors.
Now, for most millennials, our first experience with a catastrophic natural disaster was Hurricane Katrina. Making landfall on August 29, 2005, the storm started as a Category 1 in Florida and snowballed into a Category 5 by the time it got to the Gulf of Mexico with sustained winds well over 100 miles per hour. And most notably, the storm ravaged the city of New Orleans, washing away the fabric of a city that is still stitching the pieces back together 20 years later. Katrina became the costliest hurricane on record, with damages adding up to roughly $161 billion. The entire world heard about the city that was flattened and left behind. So when all the Black residents of this city were forced, if they were lucky, to pack into the Superdome or wait for rescue on their rooftops after a storm of this magnitude, you would think that help would arrive as soon as possible, right? I mean, why not?
They've taken hours after hours to get here. We've been waiting hours, and the sun is beaming, it's real hot, it's stinking out here. It's just disgusting and frustrating. And we are human beings, and they're treating us like we're criminals.
The city knew the storm was coming, and it was well aware of the risk the levees posed. Rescue teams should have been at the go, but that's not how things unfolded. So when we talk about environmental racism in the bigger picture of climate change, we aren't just saying that power plants and factories are making the air smell bad. We're saying that on a high level, the powers that be are choosing to line their pockets at the expense of the world around us. And on a more ground level, they're letting lower income Black and brown communities face the brunt of that decision. But what else is new? So, in the case of Hurricane Katrina, what do you do when a city turns its back on you during a catastrophic storm? How do you reconcile with government officials who bargained about whether or not you and your family were worth coming to save or criminalized for looting?
20 years ago, August 29th, I was 15, starting my second week of 10th grade. We were all getting the alerts that a hurricane was coming, which we already had a hurricane a couple weeks prior that we didn't have to evacuate for. So we didn't really take it as a big deal. We never had a mandatory evacuation. So my family just decided to ride it out just like a lot of other families in the city. We stayed with my grandmother. We had just moved in with her about 2 weeks before that. The hurricane had passed. We were outside again. And all of a sudden, the water just was coming down the street, like slowly. Like it got all the way to the level of the porch. We went inside. My grandmother had hardwood floors. We can like look down and just see the water seeping through. It's seeping up. It got to the point where it was to our knees inside. So they decided to pull down the attic. We all went up into the attic. We were in the attic overnight. That's when night fell. You can hear the helicopters passing overhead. You can see the flashlights of which we now know they were recording us because we just thought they were looking, to help us, but they just kept flying back and forth. So in that moment, we knew it was some damage, but we didn't know exactly how bad it was, how far widespread it was. We knew that while we were in the attic, we were calling 911. And when the calls did get through to them, they would tell us we're sending a helicopter. So every time we heard a helicopter passing by, we were like, trying to wave them down, do what we could do to get their attention. And they just started flying over us. We didn't have any answers why it was happening. We just tried our best to get their attention. Watching these documentaries that came out, knowing what I know now, it was the fact that they were literally flying over brown people and rescuing or sending food down to non-Black people. So by that time, we fell asleep. Morning came. We woke up. My family is a praying family. We said a prayer. And not too long after that, out of nowhere, a boat just was floating by. It was a few houses down, not too far away. So one of my uncles jumped in the water, swam to the boat, brought it back, and my other uncles got on and they left, and they told us they needed to find higher ground and they would be back to come get us when they do. Higher ground was literally less than 3 blocks away. They came back, they got us. It was in a supermarket parking lot. It was so many people just from the area that, word of mouth, they told everybody that's where we need to be. That's what they could bring everybody. And from there, there were people who went into the store, they got food, they got some barbecue grills, and they started grilling. We were just trying to survive, just happy to eat. We had to eat in a couple of days, and we just stayed put, not knowing where to go from there because we were literally surrounded everywhere else by water. The army trucks came in and they told us to get on the trucks. They were going to bring us to a shelter. The shelter was the University of New Orleans, and that wasn't too far either, maybe not even a mile away. It was fine at first. Everybody was just happy to be into shelter, but as people got settled in, some crazy things started to happen, much like the Superdome. There were people deceased. There were women screaming in the dark, "Is no power." Like once night falls, it's black. So by the time daybreak, it was families trying to get out of the auditorium and just lock themselves into the classroom just to be out of the general population of the auditorium, just to stay safe. It was getting pretty dangerous. The next morning, the helicopters came. We thought it was over. We thought we were getting out of here, and that wasn't the case. The helicopters, they brought us to Metairie, which is about 15 minutes past New Orleans, and they just dropped us on the street. We slept outside for another night, and in the midst of chaos once again. The next morning, the buses pulled up. They were pulling up school buses, charter buses, like every type of big vehicle, vans, anything to just start loading people up. It took a while for us to finally get a bus that was in front of us because it was miles and miles of people. Just it looked like Mardi Gras. So a charter bus wound up pulling in front of our section, and all hell broke loose. Families are fighting to get on. They're pushing. They're separating children from their mothers. They actually, our family was actually about to get separated. They were taking the elderly people first. They took my grandmother and my aunt with her, and they were trying to like push us out of the way. And my family, like, we had to stick together and bombard our way onto that bus. And just thinking back on that is a scary thought, to think that we were fighting so hard to get on these buses and we had no clue where we were going. They could have took us anywhere. New Orleans is still recovering from Katrina in many ways. It's so many houses that are still untouched to this day. It's still the markings on the outside of the house from how many bodies was left in the house. So many buildings that businesses didn't come back and they're just abandoned. It's a lot. It still looks pretty bad. A lot of the city has recovered, but for the most part, it's a lot that hasn't at the same time.
As we watch the devastating effects of climate change unfold, it's clear that if we're not careful, the catastrophic consequences of Hurricane Katrina won't be an isolated issue, but a global crisis born from humanity's tendency to prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability. The building of supercomputers isn't just a Tennessee issue. This issue is a concern for many Black and brown neighborhoods. Here in Georgia, data centers, strategically built by companies like Microsoft, are impacting the local water supply in predominantly Black communities. And in other areas where the Black people reside, like Atlanta's West End, flooding risk will impact over 20% of its properties over the next 30 years. But the question is this environmental racism? Here to discuss this issue with me today is someone who is known for sharing her political views on social media and not holding any punches. She's a lawyer, social scientist, comedian, political commentator, a friend of mine, Elizabeth Booker Houston, also known as Booker Squared. This my friend for real, y'all. Hi. So first things first, I count you as somebody, I say that I'm not an Encyclopedia Brown because I need to do my research. I do, in fact, believe that you are an Encyclopedia Brown. I feel like it just be coming off the top, off the rip. You're so skilled in explaining so many things.
I appreciate it. I don't know how I feel about that, but I appreciate it.
No, I get it. I get the pressure for sure.
Yeah.
But I just lead with that to say it would be great if you could explain to the people what environmental racism is.
Sure. So environmental racism is where you are making impacts on the climate, on the environment, things that are not good for it, and specifically targeting Black and brown communities. Mm-hmm. That's where the racism comes in. So we're talking about not caring about the climate and at the same time not caring about Black and brown folks. Mm-hmm. And putting those two things together, which you get a lot of problems.
Yeah, and if I learned anything in my African American Studies program is that racism itself is an interdisciplinary issue.
Yes.
There are so many ways to do racism, and they just won't quit. So you talk about the XAI supercomputer facility in South Memphis. What are your main concerns with that?
The main concern that I have is, I'm a Memphis native. Mm-hmm. I'm originally from South Memphis. And the main concern that I have is that they're going to destroy the water in the air. I mean, just to be blunt about it, we sit, and when I say we, I mean Memphis, we sit on top of a natural aquifer of water. Like, it's amazing. The water that comes out of the tap in Memphis is like bottled spring water. It is some of the best water you can find in the country. We actually even donated some of our own water to Flint, Michigan during their water crisis. But what's happening is XAI is using millions of gallons a day of water, and they say, right, they're going to use a gray water facility and put that in there, which is recycled water. They say they're going to relieve the pressure on the aquifer, but even from their own reports, they're only going to relieve the pressure by like 9%.
Yeah.
It's not enough. And then you also have the air pollution. When you go out there, and I stood out there by the facility, it stinks. It smells horrible. You can smell it in the air. There's no way that it's safe to breathe that in. So the air and the water are being greatly impacted in that area.
Yeah, and I'm glad you hinted towards that. So my follow-up question was going to be, some people still don't get it. They don't understand how it hits home. Like, okay, so the water is going to be affected or the air is going to be affected. And they might think that there are easy fixes for this. I'll just get a water filter, or, you know, I'll just have to drive through this particular area and it stinks. But what are some of the long-term implications of people's air and water being polluted?
Well, the first one is cancer.
Yep.
We know that cancer rates are way higher in areas where you see these facilities that pollute the air, that pollute the water when folks are breathing that in. And we have seen it in South Memphis in particular. In South Memphis, we have the biggest disparate impact of asthma, severe asthma and lethal asthma of children. I was diagnosed with very severe asthma as a toddler living in South Memphis. I was in the hospital all the time, hospitalized at least monthly. I mean, we were in the ER and there was no way to treat it because, okay, they can give me medicine. You can give me breathing treatments at the hospital, but if I'm going home and I'm going to my neighborhood and I'm breathing in that air, I'm never gonna get better. And so the children are being impacted. We know that the cancer rates are higher, and we also know that it's impacting property value. I know we're talking about health effects, but we also have to talk about, when we talk about health, we talk about healthy homes. You need a home to live in that is healthy and safe. And when they're putting these facilities there, they're also driving down home values and also making it that folks don't care to keep up the neighborhoods. So now you've got a safety issue with people not having safe housing or affordable housing. So like we talked about the housing, we've talked about the health effects. And we've also talked about the removal of autonomy. And that's getting glossed over a lot.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing a rich, white, foreign billionaire come into this city and remove the autonomy from the people who actually live there to decide what they want in their neighborhood. And so, yes, we have the direct health effects, we have the housing effects, but when you talk about setting a precedent of taking away Black people's autonomy, what's the next thing they're gonna come in and do? And I really want people to focus on that as well when we talk about this. It's not just one facility. You are setting a standard of how these people deserve to be treated and will be treated.
And I think when we think these things don't have such a huge bearing on our life, or we're willing to let the bigwigs make decisions for us, i.e. people who don't think their vote matters, or speaking up, or fighting back in some way or another. You were just telling me about how you and your friends just stand outside the Heritage Foundation on Mondays at 4 and yell at them. How nice. But you know, everything is resistance. All I'm saying is, I think when we don't take into account that pushing back matters, we're not taking into account that we are letting go of our choice little by little, and our ability to make choices rather in this sort of like insidious way. And so it's not to say that anybody, I'm sorry, marginalized communities are at fault, but you do have a responsibility to retain your power.
Yes, we have to hold on to our power. We have to speak out. There are city council meetings, and I'm seeing people in Memphis do exactly that. They are using their power. They are speaking out. They are telling Mayor Paul Young, what are you doing here? What are you doing to protect our city? They made sure to come to the director of the Shelby County Health Department, which is the county that Memphis resides in, and say, what are you doing for us? And those questions need to be asked, and that pressure has to be applied.
Do you see the pressure making any change? It's early, but do you see the pressure making any changes right now?
I do see some changes being made. Definitely the number of people all across the country with their eyes on Memphis and on XAI right now is helping. They are feeling the heat, and it's making them maybe take a little step back when they think about putting in their next supercomputer. And so something that's interesting is the next site that they're looking at is South Haven, Mississippi, which is right outside of Memphis. And what I find interesting is that South Haven is majority white. So we talk about environmental racism, right? But South Haven, Mississippi is also a lower income community compared to the rest of the country. And so we're talking about working class, poor white folks, right? And so I always say Black folks are the canary in the coal mine. You think it's not going to affect you because you're white, but they don't want you either. I always say the white supremacy people forget that supremacy part. Just because you're white does not mean you're supreme.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing the trickle effects come across different communities. So I don't know, hopefully these white folks will then maybe wake up a little bit.
I am finding some reprieve that white people are waking up to how these things affect them as well.
Yes, I was outside of the Heritage Foundation when you mentioned that. It was me, one black dude, and a mess of white folks. Just white people screaming at other white people, being like, you know, you Nazi fascist. And I said, okay, Becky, I see you. Good.
Yeah, you keep
Go
those
ahead,
eyes on the
Connor. Let them
swivel.
know, Connor. Tell
Keep
them.
those eyes on the swivel, so if shit pops off, you can back into the hedge like Bart Simpson in that one
That is
meme.
that is. You know, I always have an exit point when I show them. Like, I know I got it. Okay.
Absolutely. Can you talk to us about the role local, state, and federal agencies should play in monitoring and regulating these supercomputers and their environmental impact?
Well, the role they should play is not the one that the Memphis leadership has been playing. I can tell you that right now. Mayor Paul Young, I'm sure you know how I feel about you. I don't feel good things. But they need to make sure that they are actually putting their constituents first, the people that they serve. And I say that as a public servant. I've been a public servant for almost a decade in the Department of Health and Human Services, and everything that I had done is always centering what is best for the community. Now, mind you, I'm at the federal level, which is much larger. And so, you know, it's not like we do everything perfect. I have many, many complaints about the way the government has done things imperfectly. But the problem is when you just give up and say, I'm not even going to try to serve people. And so one thing the health departments need to do is make sure that you are holding these companies to what, you got to hold these companies accountable by making sure that they're going through the proper processes of the permits, of the reports, of the environmental impact studies. And they have not done that in Memphis with XAI. They have not been making sure that XAI is doing what they're supposed to do. Allegedly, they are operating 30 plus gas turbines against the permit requirements and the policies and everything that have been put in place. And who's stopping them? Certainly not the Shelby County Health Department, certainly not the mayor's office. You need to step in. You have to be the people that stand up against these billionaires who think they can just buy whatever they want at the expense of everybody who you're supposed to serve. It's not the time to just fall back and go, oh, I'm scared. No, this is not the time to be shaky. And if you're gonna be in that position, you cannot be shaky.
Right, and here's the thing about being a public servant. Yes, it's always about serving the people, your constituents. It's always about making sure their needs are taken care of. But at this point, I'm not shelling out any threats. I am making observations and educated guesses. You also need to be doing your job correctly for some level of self-preservation, because who do you think is going to be most accessible when these people really start talking about eating the rich?
That part.
We're seeing things happen right now as far as violence against CEOs, and the revolution is here and now, and it's happening in different ways, but it's trickling in. You need to be paying attention. So I think I'm grateful for the pressure that's being put on local and state officials, specifically because it's making it uncomfortable for them to walk around.
You gotta understand there's some mutually assured destruction happening here.
Hello?
So if you're not gonna take care of your people, the people are certainly not gonna take care of you. And I think about this all the time, and also not taking things personally. When people get mad and they talk about all the things that were going wrong at HHS, what I'm gonna do, double down on the wrong things? No, I wanna do the right things. You know, you have to separate yourself in that sense there and compartmentalize a little bit. And then on that same token, you have to make sure that you are putting yourself with the people and not completely separate from the people. You are part of this world, of this city, of this country, and you will be impacted, your family, your children, you know. I said, what's gonna happen when they've, you know, taken all this money from the National Cancer Institute, for example, right? They've defunded them and all the cancer research. Where are you gonna get the research when all the people up top start getting cancer? You're not gonna magically make that appear. You've gotten rid of the research that's supposed to help you too.
I think they think they've got doctors in their pockets. They can pay for anything, and that's just not the case. If the research isn't there,
the research
they're
isn't
going to
there.
get it.
Yeah.
They're going to get it. A man on TikTok said it best. I think he was referring to the Adriana Smith situation. He said, if his wife needs an abortion to save her life, that doctor also needs that abortion to save their life.
Yes.
Yeah. He wasn't joking.
No.
They was talking about John Q in the comments.
Oh, you know, that's the reason I became a health
question.
lawyer, is that movie.
Oh.
I watched that movie when I was 9 years old, and I said, I want to be a health lawyer.
Well, right.
Take that for what you will, because if you've seen the movie, but you know.
For sure. So what role can the Black community play in pushing for environmental justice and equity in policies affecting vulnerable communities?
Be loud. Be loud, don't be afraid to speak up and use your voice, and go to these city council meetings. Write to your representatives, write to people, call their offices. And I know it feels like folks say, okay, but you got us calling, you had us calling about the big budget bill, you had us calling about this, that, and the third, and it still passed. Okay, that was one time. Civic engagement is a muscle. You got to keep stretching it. You can't let it atrophy. You can't do it one time and expect it to be at its strongest.
Yeah.
We have to keep doing that over and over and over again. And I know it can be exhausting, but think about it. If you put something on your calendar, 1 hour each week of who you're going to call and complain about something. If everybody did that, if everybody did that and they understood that we were watching them because they bank on us getting tired and giving up, that's what they're really counting on. But we can't do that. We have to make sure that we keep at it.
And what would you say to activists who are trying to raise awareness about environmental racism, like how best to reach people?
In every avenue that is on, wherever it's authentic to you. I feel like people are trying to fit themselves into a box, and I can understand that because at one point in time I tried to fit myself into a box and try to change the way that I was, especially on social media, to fit what I thought would be more palatable. The moment I stopped doing that was when everything got better for me and I was able to help people more. So find the space that is most authentic to you, whether that be in person, whether that be on social media, whether that be helping people write letters, writing blogs, what have you. Find what is most authentic to you, and you don't need to follow some little formula that everybody's setting for you, and do your outreach that way, because that's going to be the thing that thrives.
And I love that you said to not put yourself in a box, because things have been done a particular way for so long, and I have to think that's also by design, so people won't use their gifts and talents in other arenas that need them. Like, people never know what to refer to me as, and I don't either. I say multi-hyphenate because I do so many things. And I was able to create an educational platform using my African American Studies degree to reach so many different people. But also sitting across from me is a woman who is a scientist, y'all. She is a lawyer. She's also a comedian, and she's a political activist, and she's able to traverse so many different rooms and industries to get this message across. So we thank you for your service. Not all heroes wear capes. And I'm just glad to be in company with you. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate you and everything you do, and you gotta just keep being you, because everybody, we need you.
Oh, we need you too. All right, don't leave. We'll be right back. Somebody said, Lord, whatever you cooking down here, it's done. Well, somebody, I hate to break it to you, it's not. And the only reason it's not done cooking is because of our good old friend, capitalism. Now, is capitalism really our friend? No. But by the way, he keep walking in here unannounced, eating all the food in our refrigerator like bruh man from the 5th floor, he might as well be family. Anyway, as our good old friend capitalism and the billionaires and oligarchs who feed him would have it, the biggest threats to climate change aren't necessarily tied to how much we recycle or what kind of straws we drink out of. It's about how they do business. They would rather see this earth crumble, with their only security being an inkling of a chance to afford what? Live in space after they cause the planet to go to shit? Boy, I tell you. The clock is winding down. Once again, we only have 4 years left to reverse climate change before climate and weather conditions become even more devastating. And in the past few years, we've seen the weather taking sharper and sharper turns for the worst. Do you remember when California was just on fire for weeks? And now, more than 130 people have been found dead from the Texas flooding that took place on Independence Day this year. And why? Because their state government refused to accept funds for meteorology, because in their minds, doing so would co-sign the idea that climate change is very real. Donald Trump has absolutely no regard for the environment and the millions of lives that will be affected. In his first presidential campaign, he vowed to ignore science, and that was back in 2016. In his first term, he rolled back nearly 100 policies put in place to protect this country's air, water, and land. He pulled out of the international treaty, the Paris Agreement, which was established to help protect against climate change. And he did so because of the unfair financial burden that he claimed it had on the US, which, if you didn't know then, that we completely know now, he just means his rich friends. And in this term, not only did he pull out of the Paris Agreement again, but his Agenda 47 outlines an increase in fossil fuel usage. The only thing that we can do at this point is put elected officials back in office in these upcoming special elections and midterm elections in 2026 to help us take back as much time as we possibly can by requiring that the bigwigs convert to renewable energy, putting mandates on pesticides in agriculture, and demanding ceasefires to end world conflicts to reduce gases emitted by and through warfare. But the buck doesn't stop there. We still have to demand that in the midst of all of this change, that Black, brown, or poor neighborhoods are not made to wait for climate justice, or that our neighborhoods, our children, our elderly are not sacked with the health or wellness issues associated with the waste of these companies or the sites of their outdated and pollutive tech. We have to demand that these industries orient themselves around the moral compass with a single question. Is it really clean energy if it's leaving dirty footprints? Oh, I didn't say that. Jaylen Brown did. The moral of the story is more and more voices are speaking out against climate change across industries because this does affect us all. So never miss a beat on the People's Brief. I'll be back next week with more time.